Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Yuan Tai, also known as the Happy Coach, and it's my honor and privilege to host such a wonderful audience today. And today, we have a very packed program, and I'll introduce the people who matter. So firstly, our moderator, Miss Antia Ong. She's a social innovator, board leader, and former nominated member of parliament. And she's well known for championing social causes and bringing communities together for impact. Now, yes. Now our panelists, Mr. Desmond Cole. Mr. Cole is the CEO and founder of Compassion Group, a Singapore Olympian and a Rhodes Scholar. He will share perspectives on how sports can drive social welfare. Mr. Cole. Dr. Victor Tay. Where's he? Oops. Okay. Mr. Tong Xian Hui, my favorite guy. He always asks me not to introduce him. He's the Executive Director of Investments at SG Innovate and President of the NUSS. And he will discuss trends shaping emerging technologies, the best person to ask. So Dr. Victor Tay, should we still wait for him or? Okay, we'll just hang on a moment.
He's here, so yeah. He must have to step out for a little bit.
Okay, so we'll roll. But okay, so everybody, we are seated here. Of course, you are here to learn from our esteemed panelists. But also, please feel free to connect with the people on your table. So I'm seated on this number 1 table, and I'm so fortunate to have. There are only myself and my friend, and the rest are beautiful ladies. Yeah, so please feel free to connect with everyone on your table. It's also a networking session. It's a learning session. And today's event is jointly organized by Oxford and NUSS. So give a round of applause to all those who organize these events. Yes, there's Dr. Victor Tay. Dr. Tay is Regional Managing Director at Stout and Group CEO of Global Catalyst Advisory. And he also chairs Singapore Digital Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and he'll be speaking on sustainability and climate change. Once again, a round of applause for our panelists. And without further ado, I'll hand over the mic to Miss Antia Ong.
Thank you, Yuan Tai. Good evening, everyone. How are we doing? Good. I hope your stomach is feeling happy too. Welcome. So the theme for tonight's conversation is SG60 and beyond. As you heard from Yuan Tai, this is a coming together of the Oxford alumni, as well as, of course, the National University of Singapore Society, NUSS. I have the privilege to moderate this conversation here, but we would love, obviously, for you to join in the conversation. So we'll kick off, have a conversation amongst us first, but then we have microphones for you to also ask your questions or give your comments. So we don't want to. Okay. All right, we all know that Singapore turned 60 last month, so this year has been a SG60 celebration year. At 60, I'm 57 in a couple of weeks. I would want to say that it's not retirement age at 60, but certainly it's almost a midlife range that compels us to think a little bit more deeply about the questions that matter, right? And I think it's the same for SG Singapore as well. Not so much about what car should I buy, but what kind of future am I leaving for my children and my grandchildren. So we'll do just that, asking some tough, necessary questions about what comes next for Singapore in technology, society, economy, and sustainability. I'm not going to go into introducing the panelists, as Yuan Tai had already done that. So I'm going to jump straight into it. We're going to start out with each speaker giving a little bit of an introduction about themselves based on a question I'm going to ask them. And then we'll go into 3 rounds, if we can get to, of foundations, frictions, in other words, obstacles, and then the future, right, of Singapore. So, gentlemen, I play a very important role today on stage. Otherwise, it will be what we call a manel, not a panel. But then that's why I deliberately wear a very da hong hua here. Make sure that we are here well represented. So gentlemen, what does SG60 mean to you? You can choose to talk about it personally or coming from a place of the field that you champion and you lead.
Go first?
Yes,
okay.
guys can go first.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me here today, Antia. And thank you for being the rose among the thorns here. So today, I think my part is to talk about sports and social work. This is something, as you know, is very close to my heart. So my dreams began in a swimming pool. For those of you who may or may not know, I swam for Singapore. And a lot of dreams were made for me when I was blowing bubbles underwater. But before I go on, I just wanted to kind of take it in a slightly different, from a different approach. How many of you guys actually watched Joseph Schooling win his gold medal at the Olympics?
I did. I can remember it so well.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, right?
Yeah,
so if I can just kind of start this session, trying to bring everyone into recalling this session. So can I just invite you to give me 50.39 seconds of your time? Okay, 50.39 seconds of your time. And I'd like just to invite you guys to maybe close your eyes. I'd like to take you back to that moment. I invite you to close your eyes if you would like to. And just take a few deep breaths with me. And bring you back to that moment where all our eyes were on Joseph Schooling as he prepared himself to get on the starting blocks. He was in lane 4 for the 100-meter butterfly, and his idol and someone that he really respected growing up, Michael Phelps, was in lane 2. Yeah. And in your mind's eye, just kind of think about that time when you were proud to be a Singaporean, just cheering him on and just, cheering him on inside, right? And so, if you recall, just think about him wearing the Singapore cap, and the starter says, "Take your mark." Beep. He takes off. He's one of the fastest in terms of his reaction times. And from the beginning, as he did his underwater, he was right at the front. And for the next 50 seconds of our lives, we saw a young man, 21 years old, representing our country, right, leading the field, touching the wall first in the 50 meters, and then turning over. And the rest of the group was chasing him down. And I remember for me, my hands were sweaty. I was really nervous just watching him, like, take our nation to the wall, right? Yeah. And as he touched the wall, we were all like, in disbelief, right? In disbelief. But 50.39 seconds, that time changed the history of our nation. and won the hearts of our entire country. And sports and swimming, sports is one thing that unifies all of us. It transcends beyond race, culture, politics, and all of this. And so for me, sports and swimming is very, very important. Yeah. Now, in terms of what I would love to see, or what does SG60 mean to me, I would love to see a nation united in sports. And it's also not just about sports at the highest level of excellence, but also just sports in a participation format, right? For me, I will say, and I think I'm one example whereby when I was a kid, I was hyperactive, extremely hyperactive. In my later years, I found out and discovered that I was diagnosed with ADHD and neurodiversity. Now, sports, from when I was a young kid, I was always told that I was too naughty, I was moving around too much, I could not sit still. Why are you always getting in trouble? And then suddenly I discovered swimming. My mom just brought me into a swimming pool one time, and it was just learn to swim, right? And that learn to swim sessions or that program changed the entire course of my life. Yeah, the pool gave me so much peace, and I went from breaking rules to breaking records. And I will say that there's so many levels where sports can unite us, can give us opportunities that we've never had. It is a perfect arena and almost a wonderful laboratory for learning tenacity. It's a wonderful laboratory for, if you're playing team sports, to learn how to be a team player. There's so many things we do that bring us, so much we can learn from sports that we can take to our lives beyond sports, right? Building character and so much more. So for me, I would love to see a country, a nation that is united by sports, fitness, and health.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jess. Such an inspiring way to, just hearing you talk about how you were being judged and you felt, awkward and out of place, and then finding your place in the waters. That's really, really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anthea. And one of the things I want to give respect to you for your work, your continued work around mental well-being. That's very powerful.
Thank you.
And I'll share a little bit more about my own journeys around that as well.
Sure. Let's get into that later. Yeah, thanks. Zheng Hui, what does
Okay.
SG60 mean to you?
So mine is going to be a little bit less inspirational than my former classmate, Desmond.
And by the way, I just found out that they both were already classmates in primary one.
Primary four.
Primary four, sorry.
So by that time, I think he had already expended a lot of his energy in the pool already. So we have known each other for some. But he was, I realized at that point, there needs to be two types of people in this world. The really inspirational ones like him, and the rest of us to make sure that inspirational ones really stand out. So I'm one of the rest. But
to cheer you on, right?
But I think, so from a technological perspective, and I'm putting on my hat as SG Innovate Executive Director here. For those of you who may not be aware, SG Innovate was started about a decade ago by the Singapore government under the Ministry of Finance to look into threats that the Singapore economy faces, not in the immediate term, but in the far future. In other words, how do you look at technologies to address threats that are existential to Singapore? And I think we all know what those are. We need energy, we are not energy independent, we are totally reliant on third parties for food, for water, we face cybersecurity threats, we basically don't produce much of our own. So SG Innovate was really set up to invest in promising companies from all over the world that were addressing some of these. So the kind of technologies we were looking at were things like nuclear fusion. So don't confuse that with fission. I think fission is a technology used today, but fusion is the technology of the future. We were the earliest investors in that. we looked at quantum technology, we looked at cultured protein. So we look at really what's happening in the past, but looking backwards in the last 60 years, Singapore has done very well in spite of its limitations by building not so much independent supply chains, but resilient supply chains. So you'll be very surprised, when I went to New Zealand a few weeks ago, I couldn't find blueberries. This is New Zealand. Expect New Zealand to have all kinds of fruits. And then when you tell them, they'll say, oh, it's out of season. Whereas you go to Singapore, NTUC, you can find blueberries all year round. That's a symptom, or that's a characteristic of a resilient supply chain. It's not characteristic of an independent supply chain. In other words, if tomorrow, your supply chain is cut off, you basically won't have anything already. But what it means is that if one supplier doesn't supply you, you've got other alternatives. And I think Singapore has done extremely well in that respect. But I think in the next 60 years, what Singapore needs to develop a little bit more is a little bit more independence in terms of the technology that we own, not to be over-reliant on the mantra and the strategy that has done very well for Singapore in the last 60 years, which is to attract multinationals here, to a certain extent at the expense of developing our own national champions. So, for me, I hope that in the next 60 years, Singapore is going to come up with its own NVIDIA, its own IBM, okay, maybe not so much. Okay, NVIDIA, it's Meta, it's Google. I would really love to see a deep tech, national champion emerge from Singapore's universities or from Singapore itself. And I can tell you, you would probably quote me things like Razer and all that. I know Razer very well. So for whatever reason, the connectivity today is very good. Desmond's my classmate from primary 4. Min Liang is my cousin. So Razer, I know how the whole development came about. It is not a deep tech company. It's a great company, but it's not a deep tech company. So we are looking for that kind of, I hope that Singapore will be able to develop its own national champions in the next 60 years.
Thank you, Xian Hui. Thank you. And thank you for doing the very important work of making sure that, we are secure ahead, right? And down the road. Yes, Victor. What about you putting on the head of sustainability?
Yeah, my previous life, I have been in sustainability. I did the sustainability almost for like 2 decades, about 2005. I think that's way before Al Gore came out with the inconvenience truth. Yeah. So I guess my early years I was in MTI, ADB, and also Enterprise Singapore. And very much, I think, when I think about Singapore's SG60, anyone who is just celebrated 60th anniversary, anyone? None here. Okay.
Well, very young crowd. We're all very young.
Some of us here are reaching 60, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, instead of 60 candles on the cake, I would think that, almost looking at it from economical wise, it's about almost 6 decades of reinventions. Invention and reinvention and transformation. And how it happened, I'm sure some of you would have actually recalled those days where, just looking at economical wise, my Ausonian friend from Ghana was telling me that Ghana and Singapore came independent about the same year. And we were about $500 per capita in US for the whole year wise per capita. And here it is, by now, we are about 80 over thousand per capita. And that's in US dollar, which gives us about 110,000 plus minus Sing. And that is 160 times in that entire amplification and transformation. That's a lot. And many of you are, how many of you are Singaporean here? Wow, okay, that's great, because some of our friends flew in from even Abu Dhabi and Dubai. I think we have one from Exodia.
Welcome.
Thank you.
From the Oxford alumni side, right? Yes. Welcome to Singapore and join. Yay!
And
I love how this is now so normalized. I love it.
And we welcomed all those who fly in here as well.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. And for those who benefited as Singaporean, you have seen that's about one of the shortest time any nation could have in 2 generations reaches at the $80,000 per capita. And we are top 4. That reminds me of, I think I was quite tearful about 10 years ago when Lee Kuan Yew actually passed away. And he was flashing back some of those what he had said. And in those years, I remember in 1968, one of it was quite impressionable in my face when he was actually in black and white, actually said, wow, we were from swamp to then transform towards metropolitan city, right? Metrocity. And in there, it was back up with not much of a developed economy. There's not much of a structure or ecosystem. But that courage, what he has done, and where we now benefit from that, I'll say those inventions and reinventions, and how we had, from 1819, we were just a fishery port. And I think some of you whose great-grandfather who comes here, etc., I'm probably a third generation, and some of you might have been fourth or fifth generation. And with that, it was merely just a transshipment port, or maybe a fishery port. And now, to become a financial city or hub, that's quite a transformation. That reminds me of when Dr. Albert Wisemius, that is a honorary citizen of Singapore. He came by as advisor to Singapore. In 1962, that's way before Singapore was called Singapore. We were part of Malaysia. And he basically highlighted, one, remove all the slums. That is symbolic. That basically means tearing down some of these comfort areas that we have. And here it is. I think in those days, if you recall, we have to get some of our villagers to shift to a HDB flats and even recalculate them how to actually use a lift, right? So that was one part we've done. And second part, Dr. Albert Wisemius highlighted, clean up the river. And I think that river by itself was actually one of our strongholds, because the Singapore River was what that makes up a transshipment hub. To clean it up actually means tearing down our stronghold and actually rethink about what's the other new transformative state that we'll go into. And of course, the last part, he said, build the factories. And I guess that's where EDB came about in 1962, and which after its history that we saw foreign direct investment, capital comes in, and we become what we are, creating new jobs, etc. And basically in all this transformation, I think in 1980s, we were then called the Houston of the East. I don't know whether you remember, and why? Because we had the Jurong Island, and we kind of gelled together the Jurong Island of petrochemical plants. And with that, even though we don't do oil exploration, we become an oil country in some way. And that by itself transforms us. But nonetheless, from the Houston of the East, we now try to be a sustainable city. That's quite contrary to that. Yeah. So it has been episodes after episodes of transformation. Yeah. And looking at it, I think Kofi Annan of UN basically highlighted to say, Singapore is a result of when you empower the people, and therefore you see them unleash their potential.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor. So, Victor has just taken us down memory path, and it's such a great way to segue into the next conversation. It's wonderful to sort of recap the extraordinary progress that we've made, as a city-state, and many would call us an economic miracle. To have gone from, often we use that world to the first world. But I'm going to show a little bit, as we want in this conversation, show now to the panelists, right? A little bit of a question that maybe we don't often talk about. So with this extraordinary progress, in your field, what would you say is one big unfinished business that Singapore or you are working on? Or in other words, another way of looking at it is, what have we missed? Where have been the blind spots that we can take from here, right? Because it's important as we reflect on, it's like after action review that we do, right, in projects. So we definitely need to look at what had gone well, which Victor just shared with us. But it's also important to see, what we would like to do better, or what did not go as, what should have happened but did not happen, what could have gone better. So would you like to start first, Des, or you want to, yeah.
Thanks for the question.
Throwing them off a little bit.
Yes. For me, I think In the times of industrialization, and also I speak as a undergrad, like I graduated from electrical engineering as well, and my master's degree was in economics and finance. So I'm definitely a numbers person. I lived in numbers and Excel sheets and from the head up, right? Yeah. And I think for me, it's clear that Singapore has so benefited from our brains and from thinking above the head. Above the neck. Perhaps in its journey now, as we move forward, we can move from maybe hardware or headware to hardware, right? Where perhaps we may express or be able to embody a bit more compassion and empathy in our journeys, in our lives. And I think the other nations that have taken centuries perhaps to build and grow, to mature is in its culture, values and principles. Perhaps I think that maybe, and I hope that we would have space for this to emerge. For me, coming through my career, especially of finance, I will speak for myself that I've had numerous times of conflicts and challenges within myself. What is legal and right may not also necessarily be perhaps something that my moral compass, my internal compass could align with. And those were the times that I would say gave me the most stress and challenge. And oftentimes I felt like I couldn't say anything, or even if I said something, I felt unheard. So I made do with whatever I could on my own. And I kind of also segregated my work life with my other life, which was, some of it was in sports, where I could actually, sports and swimming gave me the mental well-being breaks that I needed, but also social welfare, right? I've had the opportunity to work with various non-profit groups, one of which, if you don't mind me sharing, is here actually, Children's Wishing Well. My dear friend Trevor, he started this when he was in college, and we, for 20 over years, he's been doing this. Is it 20 over years or is it 30 years already? 23 years. And so I got involved for a while, but basically in the beginning, and now I'm getting involved again, but we were serving children or youth at risk in the communities. And I think there's so much that we can do still in that space. So that's what I would bring up.
Thank you for sharing. So really, really powerful to see that, you know, we have come so far in the last 60 years because we've used so much of our cerebral powers, our financial wizardry. But it's important now to make sure we are also whole, right? Both as a society, but also individually, we can be whole persons as well. Beautiful, thank you for your sharing. I resonate so much with that because I also went through a very thankfully illustrious finance, but also, you know, international career. I actually had my own brush with depression 20 years ago, and that really allowed me to come back home because that was a part of me, I think, in that sort of that trajectory that we're all part of. We sometimes forget to take care of what's really important, which is our heart, right? What our heart needs. So thank you for sharing that and giving permission for us all to just go from head to heart. They say the longest distance to travel in the world, it's not from Antarctica to Arctic. It's the 12 inches between our head and heart, actually. Thanks, Des. Xiang Hui, what about you?
Yeah, so mine, I mean, typical finance person, going to be a little bit more grounded on the issues which I find are a bit of a challenge to Singapore.
Yes.
Honestly speaking, it can be summed up in this anecdote. So I came up with some proposal, presented it to the minister. I'm not going to mention which minister. And the first question he asked me was, who else is doing this? He said, good idea. Who else is doing this? And that sort of enshrines the whole mentality, which I think is pervasive within not just the civil service, but also within some of our GLCs, which is, as long as you come up with the idea, it can't be good. It has to be someone else. It has to be from Israel, US. They have to do first, then we will follow. This concept of fast follower.
I see a lot of people nodding their heads.
Yeah, because I mean, this is constantly what entrepreneurs today face, which is, wow, you have a great idea, but cannot lah. You know, we are Singapore, it's not tested and all that. You bring this to the US and straight away it's adopted. And I can tell you this from personal experience.
Yeah.
I started a company, my own company in 2002 in data mining. At that time, no such thing as AI. And in Singapore, very little traction. Everyone said, wow, we understand. We did POCs, you know, returns were very good. You know, but everyone's like, wow, don't really understand why it works. So we don't want to adopt it. So in the end, we went to the US. Citibank was our first customer. Within 2 years, our revenue was about 50 odd million US dollars per annum. And Citibank then just acquired us because it was cheaper for them to acquire the company than it was to keep on paying the $20-30 million. So, you know, I had a very nice exit from there. But at the same time, I never acknowledged that Singapore ever helped me to build that company. Yeah. Because they didn't. I mean, it was fundamentally like pushing me out the door. Right. So I think that, you know, Singapore needs, or the people on top need to change the mentality from what has worked very well for the last 60 years. You know, bring in multinationals, bring in new ideas from overseas, you know, adapt them to what, you know, we need in Singapore, help to grow these companies and then, you know, grow the economy, and it's worked well. The problem is that the future economy is not going to tolerate that. You know, for instance, I'll just take one of the technologies that we invest in, quantum technology. Quantum technology has got applications in cybersecurity. Whoever comes up with the first general quantum machine is going to be able to hack every communication, all your cryptocurrencies, everything. And everyone knows this. So the thing is that if you're a fast follower, who are you following? Because no one on earth is ever going to tell you that they have built that machine. They are just going to hack all your communications. They're going to read whatever you have. And you'll never know because which idiot is going to announce it to the world? Hey, you know, we have built this machine. Straight away, everyone's going to encrypt it in a different way. Right. So a lot of the technologies today are what they call sovereign. In other words, if I have it, I am not going to allow anyone else to know about it. Longevity is another area. I mean, we talk about some of the areas in longevity, about health management and all that. And those are important. But there's also a whole body of biotech which is looking at extending life through CRISPR and some of these other methods. And again, it's a case of if they have a breakthrough in that, what are you following? Because they're not going to share that technology with anyone else. You know, the moment you see Bill Gates celebrating his 180th birthday, then you know probably someone has hacked it, you know. But he ain't going to share that with you. He doesn't need you to live longer. He just wants to live longer. So I think it's very important that, you know, we change the mindset. You know, Singapore needs to be able to say, hey, you know, we need to dare to be different. We need to go out there, be more daring. We need to experiment. We are going to fail, but, you know, ultimately, I think the rewards are there for all of us. So to me, that's the biggest disappointment I have. I think it's not something which is inherently easy to solve because it's a mindset change. It's not encoded or enshrined in any policy. So it's very difficult for people to say, hey, we accept, new technologies. It's very, very difficult for you to say otherwise, right? So, so for me, that's probably the position I have on this.
Thank you for sharing. I think that I love that honest, observation and look into, what have we missed and what more we can do. And maybe as a segue from what you have shared, Senhui, I would actually pose this to Victor, right? Is there a fear of failure that's actually holding us back to do that, right? This is interesting because I think I saw a lot of you nodding, so you're obviously agreeing with Senhui that there is that tendency that hopefully it's less now, but certainly I think we all belong to the same vintage. When we're young, there's a tendency that, if you go out and you come back, you're more welcome than if you start from here, right? And I think, to be fair, it's starting to change today. Much, much, much more developmental opportunities here. But we still have a fear of failure, right? And we all know for our foreign friends, we sometimes are very proud to say our national values are Kiasu and Kiasi, right? Kiasu is, we don't want to lose, or we're fearful of losing. And kiasi is we fear death, right? We fear dying. And not actual death, but like, like something finishes or it's no longer, right? So Victor, what thoughts do you have about this kiasi kiasu? And I wonder if you want to speak to what Xian Hui shared.
Oh yes, certainly. And I guess I didn't quite like the term kiasu or kiasi because it's KS. My dialect name happened to be Kasun. It's KS too. You can imagine during my primary school days how much abuse I would have encountered.
Trauma.
And I guess all of us being Singaporeans, we could actually understand, especially of our economic success, we groom everyone from graduation so that they could be of the highest grades, first class honors, great school, Ivy League school, and therefore you compete for that job in that glorious multinationals, and in there we kind of grow it to be, and that's where our strength is also our weakness here, that also pertaining to your earlier issue that what was unfinished. And I guess very much, I think in here, I think most of us on daily lives, maybe when we meet up with your relatives and the first thing, oh, what are your children doing? Oh yeah, he went into NUSS. Oh yeah, this great school, globally number 8. Oh, he went into XYZ school. And here it is, you saw that look of disappointment in their face. Oh, he went into the sports school. And it was almost that when they start looking. and
now there's a little bit of pride, okay, if your kids go to sports school.
And here it is that why do we have this culture, which is the kiasuism or the kiasi? Yeah. And this kind of brings me to that caution, that risk, that what do we face in the next decades as well, that what makes us successful can be the weakness as well, because it's complacency disguised as a caution, that every time you want to do something, they'll say, hey, I come from XYZ, I'm from this government, I'm from this multinational, I'm from this specialization, I know it's better than you. But in the reality, in the rest of the world, I realized that it doesn't go that way. And in many cases, they like the diversity of the opinion. If I want to comment about strategic foresight or what will happen for risk, and just now we were talking for Anthea, that Singapore has a CSF, a Center for Strategic Foresight. Basically, they're getting people from the arts, from performance, because they had a different reading than the predictable finance, funds manager, economists that some of us are. And here it is that perhaps we need that diversity to be there, to see that we are able to give a certain, not a group think, because we end up to be almost the similar way of thinking. And here it is that how do we then be able to, in here, be less patient and be able to say, to be more patient, to be able to say, failure is fine, it's tuition. Oh, you have failed a few times, great. He has not failed. He'll be successful all throughout. I'll be having qualms in hiring him because he's never never failed before. Maybe one case of that might break him, right? And I guess that's the part that maybe the unfinished business or education. But I see that we are transforming as well.
Yes, I do see. I do see pockets of changes happening. But thank you for that. And it's so true, right? People would often say that if you haven't failed enough, you haven't innovated enough. Right, but we don't have that narrative, so it's really important to change that narrative. And it's not to say that we need to celebrate failure, but we need to see what failure brings in terms of the value, especially if you can fail fast forward, as we say in innovation and entrepreneurship. Just the sheer number of ideas that come out of that, it's really quite precious. So I'm going to now turn to the floor. I'm hoping that you all have burning questions after this sort of warm-up round before we come back to the panelists with the last round of questions. Anyone would like to? Yes, please, come. And maybe if you can, thank you. Kindly tell us your name, please, before you start.
Hi, good evening, panel. My name is Tim. NUSS member at NUS Alumni. Thank you very much for sharing about your thoughts of Singapore moving forward. I'd like to touch upon the topic that is also perhaps quite dear to us is the possibility of graduate underemployment.
Right.
Because what I see is that we are all very privileged sitting here because we are alumni who feel the need to contribute, who feel the passion to contribute forward. But however, if you're getting more and more disillusioned undergraduates coming out who don't see the picture that we have used to enjoy, then you also have implications for our society down the road and even for alumni associations such as where we are sitting right now. So I'd like to hear panel's views on what are some of the more concrete steps that we could be taking to, in a way, carve out a bigger pie or maybe redesign the pie so that it is more encompassing for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Such a great question. And in fact, I think it was today or yesterday that our Minister of Manpower in Parliament also shared about the rise in unemployment of our graduates. But you also mentioned it wasn't just unemployment. Kim also talked about underemployment, and that's also another challenge that we are facing. So just to explain, unemployment, of course, don't have a job, but underemployment means you are having to take a job that may not be commensurate with the skills or the qualifications that you had been trained for, right? And it just all means that there's not enough opportunities. So, okay, panelists, what comes up for you to address? I think it's a real, and thank you for bringing us home, what we are facing now, right? As we discuss SG60 and what's ahead. Seung-Hui, why don't I start with you? What's your take on this?
Yeah, it is indeed a difficult question. I mean, I think Minister of Manpower, Minister Tan See Leng, actually did say that there's about 1,000 less employment amongst the fresh graduates this year than there was last year. Obviously, he had lots of caveats for that and all that, but I mean, let's put that to one side, you know. So I think it's that number is pretty real, and we've got to be clear about it. I got to say up front that I'm not in favor of unsustainable government policies, to sort of buttress this, because ultimately, you can create a whole segment of society that's reliant on handouts from the government. That's the last thing we probably want to do at this point in time. So whatever we do has to be sustainable. And if it's because the kind of technology or the kind of training is insufficient for the jobs that are available, and honestly speaking, that is changing on a day-to-day basis. We invest in generative AI, we invest in LLMs, we invest in all the latest technologies like agentic AI and all that. All these are taking away jobs at the fresh graduate level. Yeah. Unfortunately, so funnily enough, it's probably easier for someone with a poly degree or those ITE to actually get a job, because those are more hands-on and it can't be done short of robots taking over the job. But unfortunately, the entry-level white-collar jobs are being easily replaced by, with this kind of technology. Now, do we use it on a day-to-day basis? I think most people do, but we also find that there are limitations to that. At the moment, there are limitations, but the technology is moving so fast that probably those limitations are going to be taken away in the next 1 or 2 years. So we have got to be prepared that probably these jobs will no longer exist as they are. And I think what the government is trying to do is generally the right thing, which is, and usually I don't pay a lot of compliments to the government. I'm from the government, but I don't pay a lot of compliments to them. I try to see all the bad parts of what they do, because that's probably part of my job.
Yes, because you're supposed to see the threats, right?
Yeah, I'm supposed to see the threats, right? So if I see all the good things, then there's no need for my job. But I think that what they've done, which is the right thing, is to have this kind of program where it's a bit, they call it internships, but it's apprenticeships. Yes. Learn the trade, learn and then earn, and then once you've reached a certain level of competency, then after that, get that full-time job. I think students today also have got to be realistic about job opportunities. So it's a two-way kind of thing. The government can put the opportunities there. The students themselves must be willing to accept that the world has changed, that jumping into a $10,000 a month paying job is not the reality today unless they've got exceptional skills. And then just to adapt. And then, of course, the universities, NUSS included, is going to have to relook its curriculum to upgrade all the students so that when they come out, they actually have a legitimate shot at getting a job. So I think all this speaks to a much stronger change that needs to take place in society across the whole spectrum. But I like the question. I think it's a good and relevant one.
Yeah, thank you. Victor, did you want to chime in? Yeah, please.
Yes, definitely huge issues where it's concerned. And in here, it's not just Singapore alone, but the rest of the world. And in the past, I think you could see EDB brings in a foreign direct investment, jobs are created. But nowadays, we say we try to be high, innovative, knowledge, and therefore, it only requires fewer than those that were in past, which are manual workers and all the rest. And I was previously chairing a special needs association. And with that, we run 5 schools. That's for 7 to 62 years old. It's called Association for Person with Special Needs. And what's worse is when they're born in a special needs family, they probably find it harder to be financially sustainable. And we try to create social enterprises. And we created a cafe with a farm to plate, and therefore we get our special needs to be there, and therefore give them a jobs and earn their revenue as well. So what I mean is, where the special needs are concerned, they are much more less privileged than some of us here and NUSS graduates, right? So even they could actually look at social enterprises as some of those creation as well. So jobs no longer come from the normal enterprises. And that reminds me of Prof. Muhammad Yunus, who is a Nobel laureate winner, and basically
He's currently running Bangladesh.
Oh yeah, that,
Don't forget
with
that.
a turnout event, he's running Bangladesh.
He's an interim prime minister. Yeah.
He basically came out with microfinancing. And he basically said employment is unnatural. And why he says that? He highlighted that in the whole pyramid of the entire capital world, the entrepreneur earns the most, probably 50-60% of the whole thing, and the rest distributed out to those who earn a small wage. So in that, he basically even looked into the beggars on the street. He went and told them that, hey, look, why are you just begging? Why don't you just bring along as you knock on the door? Also ask them, do you want to buy a brush? Do you want to buy a pill? And he said, actually, the beggars are very good in observing. They actually know who is actually compassionate enough that even they don't donate to them. They buy that from them. And that reminds me that because right now it's a world of AI, and therefore entrepreneurship is the way to go. And I had a venture in AI, and basically some of my co-founders were 28, 29 years old, and they graduated from NUSS Com Science. And at 28, 29 years old, they had actually exited 2 companies. And they actually are entrepreneurs. They never been hired. And here is what I meant is, rather than to look into employment, then why not about entrepreneurship? Especially in the environment of AI, you can have automated agentic AI helping you to market, helping you to write that the sales proposal out, helps you to implement and everything. It makes entrepreneurship a lot easier now.
Thanks, Victor. I think those are very, very valuable insights. And I also think that, what came up for me is also, maybe you also need to reframe the whole concept of a job, right? I'm very close to what Muhammad Yunus said, right? How do you define employment? That it doesn't have to be someone actually making it available for us. And also, we are talking now about portfolio careers, right? That it's actually never just one job that we look to. But it's a mindset shift, because there is a certain expectation of a trajectory that defines success in Singapore, right? So if we go all the way upstream, maybe there's a need to change the markers of success to then start shifting the way we look at what's next after we finish school, right? Tess, what do you think?
Thanks so much, guys. There was one of the points I wanted to make was that we've been so successful in organizing our nation and planning for the future with strategic committees and all of this. And perhaps something disruptive comes through like AI, and then suddenly we are scrambling to figure out how to get ahead of that, right? And many of the thoughts that you guys brought up about trade schools and all of this are fantastic. I think I would love to see a nation and a future and a country which actually allows for different pathways for people of different capacities and all capacities. And the, like you say, the measure of success isn't just about your 5 C's of the past or, economic success on itself, right? That's one portion.
We explain 5 C's for our friends overseas.
你是新加坡人，很好，很好，很好，很好，很好，很好，很好。Yes, yes, but it is a mindset shift. I will, yes, for sure. I mean, I can joke here, but I will say this, right? And I laugh with my friends around AI being displacing jobs. Then I say, worst to worst, I just become a swimming coach because AI cannot displace that so soon, right? Maybe at some point in time it will, but it'll take some time. So the trade jobs, like you say, and all of these jobs may be last to go. But I will also say this, the framing of the questions, which I think is good, but it's just, but based on my experience now, and I just came back from LA where I visited my old undergraduate university of Southern California, and also 2 years ago I went back to Oxford. There is a preference for a lot of these slightly more creative, outside the box thinkers, and also there's also room for people to. They actually consciously select not to be employed, right? Yeah. And like you say, portfolio roles, portfolio jobs, and they take a series of different projects, and I think that may be another version of a career. Yeah. So the ability to be agile, the ability to be adaptable, and ride those waves are so important, as opposed to, as perhaps I think we have been so fortunate in this country to have received so much over the years during these 60 years where we, how much? 160 times? 160 times, right, where we grew our GDP, right? Yeah. Exactly. But it's just a different time of our life at this point in time. Yeah.
Can I have a show of hands? How many of you are entrepreneurs? Wow, that's great. And I know Alan at the table 4. He's an architect, but he decided to just give up his architecture job, well-paying, and be a CEO of an AI company.
Yeah. Well done, well done. Any other questions? Yes, please. Lady in front, please. Oh, sorry.
Oh, me? Okay. Hi,
sorry.
I'm Monine from Oxford.
Hi.
I have a call to action and observation. So the call to action would be all of us with a sense of crisis, the spirit of generosity, and attitude of humility. And why do I say this? We are the first blockchain law firm in Hong Kong, and we have offices in Hangzhou, where our AI team is, Hong Kong and Singapore. And I'm born Singaporean, although my dad's Taiwanese. So we have teams in Hangzhou, Hong Kong, and in Singapore, and we're setting up in Japan. So we interview 3 groups of people, and we really want to invest in Singapore and build up the office here. And when we interview candidates in Hangzhou, they want to replace me. They are very hungry and they're very aggressive. When we interview candidates, young people in Hong Kong, they want to work with me because they will invest their loyalty for a collective growth. When we interview and recruit in Singapore, they want to demand from me.
They demand from
So you see the different mentality. And we have interviewed more than 1,000 people in the past 8 years. So I really want, for the Singapore, we want to invest in Singapore, but we want everyone to have a sense of a crisis that their skills needs to be updated because we are in fast growth. So I tell everyone, 24/7, be prepared for that. Because you're so young in the first year, invest into skills. Singapore candidates tell me, sorry, I'm Cinderella, I need to get home. Hong Kong will work 24/7, and China will work 48/24. So that's how do you want to invest in yourself? To build your skills, and I'm very happy to teach. And to teach means investing my own heart and soul to skill them up. So we want to invest in talent, but do they want to invest in themselves?
Yeah.
The second thing I want to
powerful
observe, coming from Oxford, I'm sure all the Oxfordians here know, I used to lead the Oxford Singapore chapter. So when I'm in Oxford, this is where humility sets in. If you have humility, then you start taking a step back with the spirit of generosity, and therefore you see the collective interest and good. Therefore, we can all move forward. Why? Because in Oxford, you meet the Prince of Saudi Arabia, and I'm sure you know, Prime Minister, and everyone says, t-shirt and jeans, I'm nobody, don't say I'm who. Because I will ask the stupid questions, because everyone is so brilliant. And in lectures, everyone puts a, pardon me, I ask the most dumbest question, because everyone takes a step back. They are not who they are, in title or in position. They're here to learn, they're here to learn from each other, they're here to be challenged, they're here to be negated. So I just want to ask for everyone here to have these 3 different call to action, and starting from us to have that spirit of generosity as well. And thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for contributing to this conversation. Really like that you said employers, out there are willing to invest in you, but are you willing to invest in yourself? That's a very powerful leave behind. And I think you also talked to that privilege. With privilege come that humility, not entitlement, right? And that means to then bring about the collective benefit that we want to contribute to, especially when we come from privilege. And privilege doesn't mean financial privilege. It can also mean that you have the inner resources to go to, say, a place like Oxford, for example, or NUSS, right? So thank you for contributing to this conversation. The gentleman there, sorry, I just wanted to, because I saw her first. Yeah, come.
Yeah, my name is Srini. I'm
Hi.
a member of NUSS and an alumni as well. Much more on the lighter side, focused on trying to get Desmond to respond. I'm almost very close to retirement, but I take my sports very seriously.
Yay! We can tell.
I ran the tennis section for many years in the NUSS, and the question I had was, when you want to produce champions, right? Be it the likes of Joseph Schooling or others, they were given exemption on NS simply because he had the time frame to kind of do that, right? So why can't we have a policy of, kind of having more and more students from our sports schools say, you know what, the moment you enter sports school, no NS for you. Because that's the only way we can create champions. Because if you take them off at age 17 and ask them to go retrain at 19, we just have maybe SEA Games specialists and whatnot, but nothing at the global level, So this is, I think, and I can relate to tennis. We have over 500 tennis courts in Singapore. One of the highest per capita in terms of the tennis court availability, right? And yet, our national champion, had to go to NS, so there was no way he could compete at the ATP or Challenger level. So, just your thoughts on that, Desmond.
Great question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Thank you so much. Sorry, can you repeat your name again? 3D. Thank you so much for that question. I have to breathe a sigh first. So this is something that's really, really close to my heart because I also went through something like this. And so my journey was that I had to navigate. I left Singapore before 17 and a half, or started university before 7 and a half. And during our time, back then, there was some room and there was a pathway for us to start university then earlier and skip a year or two first so that we can start university. And that primary journey that we took, and Singapore Sports Council was one of the people who helped us get there, allowed us to perpetuate and not stop to go to national service at the age of 18. So we could continue to 21. But I will also say that my personal experience that it did put my own swimming career off track for a bit of time because I also did national service. I did the BMT. At one point in time, I was also sent to OCS. And
OCS is
the Officer Cadet School. Now, if I didn't get out of course for medical reasons, then yes, I am not medically combat fit. but if I didn't get out of that, my swimming career would have entirely stopped. And it wouldn't have been something I would have wanted for myself. I went on to swim in the 2 Olympic Games after that, right? But I had to navigate the system. And to answer, to put it out there, Sridi, I would say why not, right? Why not? If we have people like the Joseph Schoolings of the world, and there's a lot more talent here. Like you say, we are a nation that has the infrastructure. We have the nation that has the wealth to invest. Let us allow our future talents to get out there and do it. So that's that would be my call to action, right? I would say, like, let's do it. Why not? Of course, the execution and the details may be challenging, but I think that would be, I would say, what I would hope for the next 60 years or 30 years or 15 years, that would be one of them. Thank you for bringing this up. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. And I think, I think it's about a will. It's about whether the will is there, because there have been suggestions to say that they are representing the country. And so that could be their form of national service. Of course, like Desmond said, the devil is in the details. But I think the will and the intent needs to be established first. Any other questions? Just looking at time. Doing well on time. Any other question? Burning question? No? Yes? Oh, sorry. Yes, come and tell us why you become a Singaporean. No, it's great to also hear, the other side of things. You come into the country.
So
yes,
my name is Hazleen Ahmad. I connected with Victor on a OBA group, I think the one in Singapore, in the global group. So
yes.
I'm the OBA lead for Dubai. But 我是新加坡人，我以前住在纽约水，我的爸爸以前是警察。
警察？
对的。So yeah, I grew up in Chinatown, very small place in Brazil Police Quarters. I left Singapore in '96 after I graduated, and now I'm coming back as a global citizen, coming back home to give back and to pay it forward to my community. So I wanted to just, I have a question and a comment. So I'm very big on this concept of social cohesion, social innovation, and social mobility. So we're doing research in terms of how can we use gender equity to increase social cohesion. Because, as women or having feminine leadership, there's a way whereby we can bring in that sense of harmony. So I'm representation of woman, a Malay, a Muslim. I'm a neuro minority. I have ADHD, just like Mr. Desmond here. I'm a mother of 3 neurodiverse children who also do sports and who excel in their studies, but they grew up abroad. So I lived in Dubai, in Bahrain, in the UK. I came back to Singapore for 10 years, and now I live between Dubai and Singapore. So Victor and I had a chat on LinkedIn and WhatsApp, and I decided that I want to be the bridge on how we can bring Singaporeans overseas and how we can bring in the best of global best practices and blueprints into Singapore. So this is what we're doing in our ecosystem. If you'd like to know more, I've got my 2 CEOs sitting over there with me. We run a non-profit called Institute of Neurodiversity Singapore. I'm also the Deputy CEO of Institute of Neurodiversity Global, which is registered in Switzerland. Right. We also run World Kindness Trust, which is very interesting, a concept that we created around tokenization, which we are working together on. We have Neuropower, which is a social enterprise bridging science to society. So bringing the data, the science, and making it understandable to different stakeholders. And we're also launching very soon Investors for Impact so that we can raise money, VCs, and to fund all this good work that people are doing. So that's my comment on social cohesion. My question is on gig economy.
Okay.
So you mentioned that there is a disparity in terms of people who are, studying to do something or chase their passion.
Yeah.
But there isn't, the system is not made for them, just for someone like me and my children. So how can we make gig economy something that is, stable in terms of insurance, in terms of stable income, in terms of CPF? So this is a huge industry. So I think Victor is the best person to answer this question, but that's my question for everyone.
Thanks, Haslin. First of all, thank you for doing the work you do in neurodiversity. And especially since you're also setting up, that organization in Singapore. It's very important because the government's national mental health and well-being strategy does not include neurodivergence. At the moment, neurodivergence is not classified under mental health and well-being, right? So it's a little bit of, okay, where do we support them? And so I think it's good that you're bringing, you are creating this structure here, and hopefully then there can be a whole ecosystem. There is some parts of it already happening, but it's patchy. And when it's not fitting into the national mental health framework, then it's a bit challenging for the people trying to do the very good work. So thank you for doing that. I will answer that question, and then I'll ask our panelists too, because when I was in Parliament, we happened to debate on this protection for gig workers, and I participated in it. And this obviously also has a gender element to it, but by and large, there's also an element of their qualifications and stuff like that. And so there has been some changes in terms of policies. Right now, there is a need for gig workers to contribute CPF. Of course, the policies are still being fine-tuned, but that's coming. And we debated on it, and this is a few years ago when I was still in Parliament. So that's definitely in place. I don't think the protection is enough yet, but it actually goes beyond just the gig workers. There are also, and that's why I spoke about in Parliament, there are also single parents from very, very low income families that struggle because they are jumping from one odd job to the other. So it's not the sort of the platform workers or gig workers you necessarily talk about, right? This is still the traditional where they're sort of going from one to the other, and where is that protection for them? So that's all. I mean, I don't think we've nailed down exactly, but then the CPF part is one part that has started. Also, freelancers have been organized. Now there's actually a association, a union in NTUC. It's a very recent thing that actually brings freelancers together. And so that's also a worry that we need to, and so now there's also a policy that if you take on a freelancer's work, I can't quite remember the details, but there's also a CPF contribution that gets built in. I don't know whether that's mandated or that's voluntary, right? So some things are happening, but I'm glad that we raised this. Okay, Victor, go, and then we can have.
Yeah, that's truly an issue. Thanks for raising it.
Yes.
And before I dive into the issue, I wanted to highlight, especially as Lina example, that for those that we are looking at jobs that are dwindling in Singapore, why not create? I mean, this is a great example, right? Why not look for jobs in the global cities? And after all, Singapore is born global. And here it is. We can be in Dubai, can be in Switzerland, Zurich. And while we are doing that, then why not even create a social enterprise? Like an entrepreneur solving societal problems and challenges. And here it is, you create jobs for others, apart from creating jobs yourself, right? And reminds me of my MBA in Oxford. While I think almost 100% came in were employed. And when we leave and graduate, almost like 30% of them decided to be entrepreneurs. They realized that why are they actually working at this meager salary for someone else, and probably in some way also quite marginal and sometimes not contributing to the society. And I guess it's heartening to hear from Haslina example in this case. And diving into the issues itself, that the platform workers issue, I was previously chairing the economic roundtable for Institute of Policy Studies. And that's part of Lee Kuan Yew School.
Yeah.
And usually we test that at the issues there, we discuss it before we table to the parliament. That's the power of AI now, right? and in there, notably, that was 2020 at COVID time.
Yeah.
So therefore, we raised that
That's
and we
why I was in
highlighted
Parliament.
the Grab drivers, the Gojek drivers, and of course my Association for Persons with Special Needs. Some of them are contract workers.
Yeah.
And here it is, what are their CPF and how do you actually commensurate them? And here it is, I think that's where NTU is in the Parliament.
Yeah.
And later on they debated this and it came in.
Yes.
And unfortunately, of course, the cost has to go somewhere as well to contribute to the platform workers. And probably your Gojek, your Grab, etc., had a slightly platform fee and some of this that are meant to be for them. And the CPF is still optional if they opt in.
Yeah.
Because part of their takings has to go in there. So some of them decided not to have it. But nonetheless, that's a partially solved.
Yeah.
And there could be more
That's a path.
that could be done in there.
Yeah.
But definitely is worrying for those which are less fortunate, like the special needs.
Yeah.
Because I think where they are, usually they're under a guardian and caretaker. And as they age at 40s, 50s, their caretaker may no longer be around. And they might not be financially independent. And that's quite worrying.
Yeah. Thank you, Victor. We have 3 minutes left because we want to hang around. So we want to end at 8:30. So can I round up with the panelists by asking you this one question that obviously is to be full of hope, looking ahead into possibilities. If you could write Singapore's headline in 2040, which would be SG75, so 15 years from now, what would you want it to say? So one-liner, what would you like the headline to say? Take a moment to think. Yes.
I'll start first because
Can we
that's
go?
exactly how I started. I think for me, the ideal headline is going to be Singapore company first to hit a $20 trillion valuation.
Victor, what would your headline be?
It's something to think long and hard about it, especially you think about Singapore nation building. That if there's a storyline, if there is a book about nation building, you'll find that Singapore probably exists in that chapter, right? Because of the last 50, 60 years, which country could have been there? And here it is, we could have been like the Maldives or Mauritius because of our size. Or at maximum, we could have been like a Venice, but nonetheless having to face a submerging, sinking island issues. But here it is, I think what we have done in here, notably how we had in pragmatic survivability issues, how very much we had in here exported away from, don't have enough water. We actually had new water, and our neighbor Malaysia basically said, why are they drinking their own pee, right? So in here, basically the headlines is Singapore, the survivor country that actually exports some of this, how livable, how all this urban city, how all this innovation of what is practical.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor.
Okay, for me, as you know,
Bring us home.
yeah, I am your necessary hippie here on the panel. Okay, so I will say Singapore, the world's happy, healthy nation. Longer lives lived happy together.
Yay.
That's what I would say.
What a nice way. That wasn't even planned that he was going to end it all. Thank you all. Let's thank our panelists. And I think it's clear that hope is a choice. So as we look forward to the next 60 years, I think we are talking about responsibility and possibility and contribution, but I love humility and generosity also being brought in. And thanks to Desmond for bringing us home with that last headline. So thank you all for your attention, for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this session. We're hanging around, so please hang around with us. Thank you.
Thank you.